Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to Karate Without Belts. I'm always John.
And I'm Jeremy.
Welcome, folks. Today we are going to be writing a little on what we were talking about last week, but we're going to go at it through talking about testing, how people get tested, should people get tested, and what does testing mean. But before we get into that, Jeremy, how the heck you doing today?
Just been kind of a crazy week, but with my brace and some of the other things that I've been able to do, I've actually started working on AQ again, which I hadn't done in a long time. So that was kind of nice. So it was kind of a shock that I was like, no, I just need to work on that. And
Is that
that's a
working all right in terms of footwork for you, or are you just doing the arms?
I, I'm just taking it real nice and just nice and easy. I'm not putting a lot of power. I'm just going through it really slow, looking at the refinement of some of my hand movements and stuff like that. So that's been kind of cool.
Cool, great. This week I've been working, just continuing to go on the journey of putting a little more on top each time. So if I want to do a kata, I'll do two of the same kata. And then if I want to do two kata, I'll do each kata maybe three times and something like that. Seeing it kind of like reps in terms of that, and then maybe varying it up and getting a lot of trying to get a lot of running in. So when someone isn't trying to break in my house and or a typhoon isn't hitting. So
Ooh, I
so
got you.
so not so much that I think that's going to happen on the island, but the Philly instincts kicked in when someone's when I hear something knocking on the door. So
Yeah, I understand that. I appreciate that.
yep, but it is what it is. Last night I had a really nice time training with a Kyokushinkan brown belt, and just had a real good solid basics hour of just doing basic handwork and footwork, and then they had this like body pad that was just could cover your body, and you kind of held up with like both arms up, and you could, other than the face, it pretty much just covered your entire body. So
Hmm,
but
cool.
it had been kind of old, so protecting the valuables, as it were, was not as padded as you'd like.
I understand. Gotcha.
So it is what it is. I'll move it on from that fun topic.
Yeah.
Um, so we're getting on talking about testing today, and I guess how do we want to define testing from the start?
I mean, as far as testing, I mean, to me, it's what what is it that meets the basic skills to hit an actual test? I mean, you look at it from not just martial arts, but look at it from an education perspective. Hey, are you going to pass this to move on to more material? Are you going to do And I mean, I know different places are different. Everybody's got their own set of requirements for testing, the curriculum,
Standards, stuff like that.
yeah, standards, things like that. So I think in that aspect, I think everybody's a little bit different. Even if you're in some organization that's got it laid out to a T. And I mean, maybe I'm wrong on that. I mean, now I think about it, there are a handful of organizations that you know it, you either hit all these requirements or you don't pass. Period.
Right. I think largely is in how dependent or independent the school is. So if the school is I don't want to say I don't think we've used this term on the podcast yet, like a Dojo, which is part of a like a large organization that kind of just like pops up all of its stuff. But that can also be across the board with anything related to big styles like Shotokan and Taekwondo, which
Well,
tend to be fairly cookie cutter in what their requirements are.
Well, I mean, you also anymore. I mean, you have some of these really big um, organizations or schools that are offering, five, six different styles, and they're offering rank or they're offering belt testing in each one of these styles. Well, every time I see something like that, I'm like, okay, who's the person that's able to give or be able to test in each one of these disciplines? I mean, because I mean, technically, technically they should be, separated. I mean, if you're getting, a belt in jujitsu, a belt in Ishinru karate, and belt in taekwondo, or some type of testing, and maybe even Wing Chun Kung Fu or something. It's just something totally different.
How do you
It's
have all
like,
this existing in the same under the same roof?
yeah,
Um,
it,
I think
it's
some there are some places I've seen them they pop up and they go away. And some are more successful than others, but they have multiple teachers for multiple styles, and they when you can get some martial arts teachers to quiet their egos enough to band together to have a space, because at least in the country we're from, it's the quest for real estate in a lot of ways. Um,
yeah. I mean, even in the even in the bigger cities, you've got that as well too. So I mean,
right, and I think in some of those cases, that's enough case for students talking to each other where they're like, what do you need to do for your test here, and what do you need to do for your test here? Different styles will have different requirements. Um, but I think, especially when it comes to when we talk about testing, I particularly think that when you kind of get away from the talk of rank, which we were going on a little last week, and you're just more worried about what should a test be or what should testing be. Um, I really feel is more of an existential question of martial arts, because that's what martial arts is. It's the test of character, the test of skill, the test of will.
right.
So,
Well, I mean, you get into several theories of mind, body, and spirit.
right.
And not just, okay, I see instructor do exercise A, I can do exercise A. They do B, I do B. Not so much that, but what else are you bringing to the table?
Right.
And when you start getting into your higher ranks, I think, or higher belt levels, you start getting into more. What is this person actually contributing? Are they actually contributing? Are they moving the discipline forward? Are they of good character out in the community? And it just kind of carries over. That's my take on it. And hey, I can be completely wrong on it too. So it's
Well,
all
if you
good.
no, I mean those are important points, because if you're just looking at karate from a completely technical perspective, then those things don't matter. Um, but if you're looking at karate from a more holistic perspective, then those things should matter when we're trying to build our communities and build our schools around that. Some feedback I got from last week was that the grade, well, it's the flawed system, but it's a system that we have. And sometimes I can get behind when people say that. Um, uh, Maybe not so much in this case, but especially when you're talking about testing people's abilities and testing their technical skill, um, that only goes so far as to see what that person's going to be able to do, and not necessarily going to be able to show what they're willing to contribute. So, what should someone contribute, kind of maybe outside of that? Do you think?
Um, I mean, one of the things that one of the like guiding principles we have is, or Dojo Kun, what, however you want to call it, is like, you know, strive for good moral character. Is this person moral, or is this person, you know, okay, yeah, they're a great technician, but once they walk out the door, they're a complete jerk. And I mean, is it showing that way? And one of the things that we talked about last week is, if you've got skill, if you're an instructor and you've got skill enough to watch somebody, you can you can pick up little things on their moral behavior. If if they're willing to give to other people, or I mean, not just money, but I mean, are they willing to teach? Are they willing to train with other people? Are they willing to set aside their ego? Are they willing to, help someone else out? I mean, things like that.
Right. And do you think that can really be tested, or how could that be? And how could thing be tested? Because you can't really give people necessarily a moral
Right.
test, but you can kind of judge
You
their
know,
character.
you're you're a moral black belt, but your skill levels at a yellow belt. I mean, yeah, you're right, you can't do that, but on the same token, it gets to the point of, is the person teachable? You know, are they able to be teachable or not?
Right.
Um, I know you've run into people that have been, well, I know this and I know that and I know this and I know that and I know this and I know that, and it's like, well, okay, that's, and you just kind of sit back and kind of, okay, that's cool, that's cool, that's cool. And then, if you want to approach them about, hey, would you like to trade some? No, I don't want to trade anything. I just know this, that, or the other thing. I mean, I know you've run into people like that as well as I have as well.
Right.
Many different arenas and stuff. Um, that brings up a story long, 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 long time ago. I I went back to college for my degree, and they were starting up a martial arts club. And I'm like, hey, that's kind of cool. And so I'm in there with this guy, and
I may or may not have some experience in that regard.
no, oh, I got you. And the guy's like, well, I'm so and so, and I'm seventh degree black belt or whatever he was. I don't even remember. And he's like, yeah, okay, that's great. You trained in whatever, this, that, or the other thing. And then, and he really, really quite arrogant. And, I'm just kind of like, look, I'm here to just kind of help support the college. Maybe this will be a good thing, stuff like that. And so he proceeds, well, I want to see what your best technique is against a punch. And he throws a punch at me. And because he kind of rubbed me the wrong way, I mean, I I hit him on the arms and numbed his arms. I mean, I hit him as hard as I could. I really did. Like, okay, we want to play this game, we can play this game. All I know is his arm went straight dead and he could not move it for 45 minutes. I was shocked that, he could not move it. It was just down at his side the whole time while he's doing all this stuff. And it wasn't my intent, but it was my intent to get his attention. Like, hey, let's work together. Let's not be a jerk.
Right.
And 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 we became friends after that. After that, it was kind of pretty cool, and we had a pretty good working relationship and stuff. So it was it wasn't bad. So it was all good. So but he was sixth, seventh at the time. I think I was first degree, or I think I had my first dan for maybe a couple of years or whatever. So, but like I said, it just depends on how you perceive things, how
Right.
you perceive the rank, how do I perceive my rank, and how do I perceive you as this rank?
And so he was trying to test you on your skill, and you were trying to test him on what he was doing,
Yeah, pretty
kind of
much.
character and character to a degree.
Yeah. So I mean,
And
I wasn't trying to be a jerk. I was just like, I just want to work with you, babe. So that's all. So, but anyway, so
I think that's almost like what you that story you just relayed is almost a story of martial arts sociality in martial arts, right?
yeah, yeah,
Because how many other stories are almost exactly like that, where you have someone who's arrogant comes up against somebody who isn't trying to be arrogant, has to test something, and people end up having mutual respect in that way. I think that kind of I don't want to say mythology because that isn't mythology. It's not something happened to you, but
right.
that kind of background in people's head about martial arts, I think, is probably the most important bit. And that's when it comes to testing yourself out against other people. That's when the ultimate test is going to be. Um, to kind of bring it back to kind of testing a little more was when I was trying to run things as a test, as it were. I remember I only had a group of maybe four guys or four people, and all they knew were two katas because that's all. When I was in college, I led a group, and it was all maybe we were training for 3 months, and that was pretty much all the time we had. And it was like the end of the semester, and I was like, okay, what can I do to test everybody? Mind you, I wasn't trying to really put them up for rank. I was just trying to test them. And
Hmm.
so we pounded those two kata into the ground 2 hours straight. Just the first two kata we practiced is all we did, 2 hours straight. And the room was pretty heavy after that. But I think almost the more important part to do than to kind of see what people people remember or people know. It's not necessarily what they remember or what they know, it's what they can do.
Yeah.
So I think that's one way of testing people. um, to bring it back to on a kind of more of a we talked about moral testing, but how should we test people then? Would you approximate what should be the way we go about testing, um, if we were to kind of deliver a standard, if we were to proclaim to the world on top of a hill, like
Yeah.
this
Well,
shall be the standard.
I don't know. I don't think there'll ever be that. But I think one of the things, one of the things I really worked hard whenever I tested somebody was a lot of times what I'm trying to do is not so. I mean, I'd hit. Okay, here are the skills you gotta hit. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, here's your check mark part of it. Now, give me the background on how all this works. So then all of a sudden, my engineer background comes in from my career. Is like, okay, that's great, you can do it and all that kind of stuff. But if you don't understand this stuff, if you don't understand where it's coming from and what you can do with it, I don't care what belt you are and how you test. I don't want you to get in front of a test in a testing situation. It possibly feel very uncomfortable and almost embarrass yourself. And I've seen things like that happen where, yeah, they knew the checklist, but they had no grasp on how everything was put together.
So
Does
how
that
do you?
make sense?
No, that makes perfect sense. Because there are the I don't want to say kata zombies, but we are getting into the Halloween season. Um, so you have people who are like exercising like kata zombies, where they'll just like walk through katas, they'll walk through exercises, and they'll be able to maybe parrot through them. A lot of what people don't, I don't think, understand is that everyone starts at a different level physically when they start.
Well,
Whether it's 5 years old, 15 years old, or 50 years old, right?
right,
So people's ability to absorb and whatnot, it can all, is all relative. But people compare it what they see, but that doesn't necessarily mean they understand it.
right.
So how would we then go from, because I don't think anybody really does much of a test past what I think what you were talking about last week in terms of checking understanding,
Yeah,
or doing it in a productive way, like you're talking about.
right.
So would it almost end up being two separate tests in that regard?
No,
Where it's, oh, okay,
I no. Um, I mean, to me, there's always ways to to drill down into something, such as, um, well, like one of the things I would, what I would do is I would take a handful of movements, whether it was from kata, whether it's from exercise, maybe put a couple movements together from an exercise. Okay, how can you actually use this from a punch? How can you actually use this from a grab? I mean, get them thinking. It's like, because you when you walk out of that dojo, when you walk out of that training hall, you're not going to be in a safe place to train. It's
right,
like
necessarily,
you better be thinking on your feet. And that's why I try to, like, what are you thinking about? How are you going to analyze this? I mean, if somebody's walking towards you this way, what can happen? What may not happen? Don't know, but be aware of what's going on. What can happen? What can you do? Think. Don't. I mean, your instructor is not going to be there to coach you through a situation if you get into it.
right.
And I'm not saying that I know all the answers. I don't. But I it goes back to something Mr. Oyata said when we were in Okinawa, and is one of the best pieces of advice. And he says, there's no secret to self-defense, and is giving yourself enough time to make the right decision. Don't just do something. Give yourself enough time to make the right thing that's gonna help you out.
Okay, so let's break it down in a actionable sense.
Yeah.
Um, so let's break this down then. So we got a student. Let's say
Hmm.
we got, or we want to formulate a test for a group of people. Say they've maybe gone through about 6 months of training.
Okay.
What test would we want to formulate for this group of people? Would it have to be in a group? Would it be individually? Would it be a mix of both? And how would
Mix.
we do that? And how would we do that knowledge check?
I mean, it would be in a mix. I mean, you'd want to test individual skill. Can the individual do the checklist? Boom, 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 boom.
Okay,
Done.
so checklist is still on the mark, because we need to make sure everyone knows that's a kind of an easy way to kind of check if people can at least zombie through something.
Right. I mean, that's kind of your baseline that you're looking at. At that point, that's when you have a mix with, if you've got several people, you've got a mix within your class, and basically like, that's when you start possibly pairing them up to possibly, okay, create a technique out of boom, 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 whatever. I mean, if they punch, do something with that. What can you do? Get them to think on the feet, and not something like, okay, you've done the first kata in your discipline, and you've done like maybe the first exercise or two in your discipline.
Maybe
Don't pull something from like exercise 12 or kata number 10 or something
something
just
you don't know or something you're not good at.
right, something that you've not been practicing, but something, okay, maybe take this little movement out of kata and add maybe an outside block and a punch. So, something just to get them thinking. Be able to think on their feet. And sometimes I like, maybe it's something they've kind of seen, and maybe it's something just with a little twist. And I like just adding a little twist to things, because then it's like, okay, now you're truly thinking on your feet.
So so showing variations on themes, while at the same time we're seeing that they have the bare skeleton, so they can actually demonstrate that they understand what's going on, rather than just saying parrot go, okay, the end.
Right.
All right, all right. I mean, I think a lot of people can get behind that. I think the think on your feet thing doesn't seem to really apply to a lot of people. I've seen that in like black belt testing with some people, very very kind of vaguely. But if that becomes like,
but where do you start with that? I mean,
yeah, exactly.
do you just spring it to them like, hey, guess what? You're gonna be testing for Shodan, and hey, we're gonna spring all sorts of crap on you that you've never experienced before. It's like, get it doesn't have to be a huge thing, but get people started thinking on their feet from the beginning, and then once they get to that done right, then they've built up that muscle quite a bit. I mean, that, like I said, that's my take.
So that's the technical aspects and kind of the chart aspects, as it were. What about physical aspects?
What about what? Sorry.
Physical aspects. So like, for example, could do we, and obviously this is relative to age, body ability, and stuff like that, and so it's also going to be based upon who's in the school.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what I've definitely been thinking about a lot, especially when it comes to basics, is that basics and conditioning need to be kind of in tandem, right? Because you can't do good basics without that conditioning. You can't form good skills without conditioning, right? Your arms aren't going to function better if they're smaller and weaker, but they will function better if they are better defined and you've done something to improve them. Same thing with your core, same thing with your legs.
Right.
This is something I've been thinking about a lot lately. So should a physical test, right? Push-ups, sit-ups, running, squats, you name it, wheelbarrows, which are always fun. Sparring even can be considered, and maybe even something separate from that technical test.
I think some.
Hmm.
I think some, but I don't think that it. But like I said, this is my take on it. I think some, but I don't think it needs to be full on requirement, such as I mean, by the time they test, I mean, almost every instructor that I've been a part of, worked with, they're like, we've seen you for months on end. We've seen your development. We've seen your commitment. We've seen your physical attributes, your stamina, different things like that. by the time you get to a test, I think it should mainly, to me, it should be skill. To me, I always like to be skills and can they take it past just the checklist? Can they actually use the stuff? Can
Right.
they use? Can they actually use it? Can they think about it? Can they actually think about what they're doing? So
And I 100% agree with that. One thing I think that could be helpful to a lot of people, and I think could well merge the kind of library aspect, study aspect of karate with bro gym of martial arts, is
mhm.
that you when you start anyone, and this is just me spitballing, but I think this might not be a bad idea. When you start with anyone, you figure out what their physical limits are and you write them down. And then maybe every 3 months, every 6 months, whatever, you kind of go back and be like, all right, where are we at now? Where are physical limits now? And then the next 3 months, all right, this is what we got to work on. Okay, then the next 3 months, this is what we got to work on. And so in a way, it kind of almost becomes like breaking your records with gym, breaking your records with running, breaking your records with and that because that's going to all spill over into your sparring. That's all going to spill over to your ability to kind of quickly adapt and stuff like that. Because the healthier someone is, the better they're going to be at getting this stuff off the ground, right? Um,
Well, I think also you will see it in their day-to-day practice too.
right,
I mean, I know I can tell when somebody's gotten much better in their conditioning just by the way they do the kata,
right.
and so that should be shown there as well. I mean, but that's to me that's my perspective too. So
No, I think there's room for all of it, but and I
yeah.
think it's just like thinking it from a kind of a I don't want to sound corporate but like four quadrant perspective or holistic perspective.
Yeah, but I also think, to tie into that though, if you're the instructor, if you're the instructor, it's your responsibility. You're the one setting up the parameters on how you're going to test them.
Right.
Yeah, kind of like a college professor. I mean, you can have a college professor that goes right by the book, or you can have a college professor that kind of goes by the book and kind of goes, "Hey, let's see how this really works." Or you can have a college professor like, "Heck with the book, this is how this really works." So I mean, it's several different ways, and I think that comes into this as well.
Throw out the
Because
kata. You're just going to be punching a makawara for the next 6 months.
I mean, if that's what you're testing on, hey, good luck keeping any student. I'll say that much. I mean, I mean,
Makawara.
maybe there are
All you're
people.
doing is Hojo Undo for the first 7 years.
Yeah, I mean, maybe there's some people out there that just want to punch a mock war for a couple years or whatever, and that's it before they start training. But I'm not one of them. I mean, I've done my share of mock war training, but it's like, yeah, no, I
Yeah.
don't want to do it for that long.
And I think when thinking about testing and stuff like that, there's places that do monthly tests, weekly tests, year or whatever. I think when I think of testing, I think of it from like 3 to 6 months. And kind of what we were talking about last week is that if it is better as an event for your school rather than as like necessarily a personal test for one person,
Yeah,
uh, I think that's really where you can really build a good community actually out of getting to a certain point. Um, without necessarily pressuring or putting the pressure on one person to, you have to be here by this time, rather than just saying, okay, let's see where you're at.
Yeah, it that's one of those. One, I think it's a instructor preference. Number two, I think it's also the student, and I hate to say this, but it can also be the parent perspective as well. Depending on what kind of school you got, and I, it, I don't know it.
Karate moms all coming after you for their kids' next black tip.
We have 50 belts to get to our black belt, and so we will be testing every 2 weeks, and you will be charged $100 every 2 weeks to test. So good luck. I mean, it's like, come on. I mean, things like that just irritate me to no end.
But outside the insanity of that is like, when we talk about testing kids, I think it's almost more important because you're helping form someone's idea of what their test is. And I think a lot of places might kind of not necessarily value that.
Yeah, I think you do have to address it to a point, but having that many jumps and this and all, I think personally, I think that's ridiculous. But I mean, I understand you're trying to build confidence in the kids and things like that. But a lot of time, I mean, I've seen it, and I take it you've probably seen it as well, where it's almost more important for that kid to get a black belt than it is for. I mean, it's more important for the parent for that kid to get a black belt than it is for the kid to get a black belt.
Well, and that's, were I to be running a kids program now, I would straight up tell the parent, this kid will not get a black belt because we don't give black belts to kids. That's my perspective personally, is that I would, we're just talking from straight up, not talking about junior black belts and senior black belts and whatever is kind of thrown in there. No, we don't do that. But interestingly enough, here in Japan, when the kids start training in the black belt in the karate clubs at school, there's an understanding that you can get a junior black belt here, but by the time you get to high school, you're starting back over in white belt. And they straight up, they're like, okay. And they're perfectly fine with it. Because they'll work their way back up the rank.
And that kind of goes back to culture. I mean,
right.
I mean, you think about the United States, most people have a problem with trying to start back over.
There's nothing wrong with starting back at zero.
No, I mean, but I think, you've got to condition the person to actually accept, okay, it's okay to start back at zero. I've seen a handful of people that were able to do that, but I've seen more that couldn't. So.
Right. And then, and we're talking something very specifically about kids and kind of progressing as they grow older.
Well, I'm talking about that, but I'm also just talking about straight ego, period.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I've seen adults. I mean, adults would go do something else, and then they'd come in. And it's like, oh yeah, we can. I was this ranked. Great. I mean, what do you want? A cookie? What? I don't know. It's congratulations. Good for you, but it's not going to fly here. And sometimes they don't like to hear that.
Yeah. That's, I think, understandable. But again, that goes back to culture. Is that people don't want to be and it goes back to testing too. Is you were you don't know how that person was tested.
Right.
That person might say we did X, Y, and Z. They might not they might not be honest about that.
Right.
Um, if it's your responsibility as a teacher, if you are a teacher, um, to test that person regardless. And I think starting somebody over is fine. And if people aren't happy with starting over, then maybe they shouldn't.
Well, I mean, what's the true issue?
Yeah.
I mean, is it the art or is it what's going on inside your head? You know, and that's a whole nother discussion. So
Yeah. I mean, what is it? Because it's a distinction of how people perceive their rank and how they perceive the social distinction of, well, I trained and I tested for this. So I earned this right to be called X, Y, and Z.
right.
Right? And they've tested to where become, or they haven't. So that other person hasn't earned the right to do that, and so you end up with this weird social jealousy nonsense. Um,
No, knowing that, but it goes two ways. It goes from the person being tested, how they perceive that test, how they perceive what they're getting from that test, and then you've got other people who are perceiving, huh, what is it like to be up there? What is it like to be second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, whatever Don rank or whatever.
it's not that different from the other ones.
I know. I get it. I get it.
Don't tell the feds.
Well,
But I mean,
well,
this does
yeah,
bleed over to other parts of life.
well, it's funny. One of the things I think, I think, what was it? I mean, when I was with Robbie, my first instructor, Robbie Morris, he'd always say, it's very interesting. The people that come in here real gung ho and this and that and the other thing, and just and whatever. They're the ones that usually quit within a year to two, because usually they get about a year or two, and then they burn out. They find something else that they're passionate about, whatever. But he always said the people that come in very humbly and not really looking to get a black belt or this or that or the other thing are usually the ones that surprise everybody and end up being black belts. And I mean, I was kind of in that boat too. Uh, I think I've told you this story. I mean, when I started, I was just like, hey, that'd be kind of cool. And there's been a lot of fights breaking out on the docks where I was working at. So I'm like, because I was unloading trucks at the time. So I'm like, really, I don't know squat. I'd get killed. I mean, I came to that. I had no clue what I'd do if somebody attacked me. I really didn't. So I went in like doom 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 doom. I went into it pretty stupid, I guess, in a way, stupid and humble. And like, okay, I just want to learn. Boom, boom, boom. And I just really got into it a little bit, but I didn't go all, oh, I'm going to be a black belt. I really didn't even think about that until, what was it? I was probably maybe at a NICU. Then it finally started kicking in. Wow, I'm really getting close to being a black belt. I was kind of, okay, what the heck? If it happens, cool. If it doesn't, cool. Whatever. So I, and I guess that's how I always took it. I really wasn't going for rank until later on, after I'd gotten a little bit into my Don ranks and stuff. I was like, I really would like, I was like, I'd really like to hit seventh Dan. To me, that would have been the cream of the crop. And then I realized, you know what? Doesn't really, to me, it doesn't really matter anymore. It really didn't. And so, but that was me. But I mean, that was just kind of a
Yeah.
goal I wanted to set for myself.
And the goals aren't
Yeah.
bad.
No, and I
Goals are
mean,
good.
and that's cool. But as far as I was concerned, anymore, I don't, I really don't care. I mean, I'm happy walking in some place and saying that I'm, GQ. I'm fine with white belt. I'm good with that. That's fine with me. I'm here to train. That's main it. You know, so it's just
Right.
kind of that's just kind of where I'm at right now. But,
Well, we were talking a little before about kind of where ranking falls in culture and necessity, um, right before we got on air.
yeah,
And I mean, I would totally agree with what you just said, but I mean, so I'm touched on this a little bit last week. So I'm going to talk about this before we um, go into a little wrap up is kohai and senpai. And what those words actually mean is that a senpai is senior and kohai is junior. These are Japanese words for them. Many places in East Asia follow this system to a degree. Japan, very, 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 very exclusively so. Um, and American culture and Western European culture really doesn't have it so much at least it's not so systemized and solidified. And this is where I think the big misrubbing, as it were, between the two cultures kind of comes into play because I will make no judgment on this system, but it does help delineate between people who are older and people who are younger, and does kind of almost mandate a certain part of social respect. Should it be that way? I'm not going to say one way or the other. But a good example is somebody who enters a job in a company. They are kohai. Like someone enters a dojo, they're kohai. It's the beginning, it's their first time in, whatever. When we talk about either situation, it is the senpai's responsibility to help the kohai, to help train the kohai, to help get that person used to where they're at, whether or not it's a job or it's in the dojo. And normally, it's kind of seen as 3 years to go from being in that junior position, being in that beginner position, to being in the more senior position. So, and I think that's a fairly decent amount of time to at least learn how something is done, whether it's work, whether it's a job, or whether it's martial arts, what have you. Um, I don't think that has permeated so much in the American European cultures as much, but I think that's also where a lot of people in cultures we come from don't understand that when they first go in. Like you were saying, someone who wants to Yahoo in their first go will burn out really quickly.
yeah,
Someone who's willing to learn will stay for a while.
right. And to tie into that a little bit, I think I think there's a mutual respect that's also has to be, I don't know, agreed upon,
Right.
so in some way, shape, or form. Um, I know I've had instances in the job market where I've had people, well, you're you're so and so, or you're a contractor, or you're this, or you're not a part of this company or that company or whatever. And it's like, well, I don't have to listen to you, things like that. And that it's very similar to what we're talking about, with with belt testing, with rank, with all that kind of stuff, there comes responsibility, and there also comes a respect that I think a lot of people lose out on.
Right.
And and oh yeah, I want to be the next black belt, this, that, whatever rank. It doesn't matter. But if you're not respected, then what are you really gaining? I mean, that's my question. I mean, if you get all this in the perspective of you from someone else, yeah, great, you got a lot of skill, but you're a complete jerk. Nobody wants to work with you. Whether it's work, whether it's martial arts, whatever it is. What did that rank buy you? What did that test buy you? What, piece of paper? Who cares? So that's just my thoughts on it. So
No, and they're spot on, because even if you manage to have kind of negative success in that regard, who are you surrounding yourself with, right?
yeah,
If you have that kind of selfish success, who are you surrounding yourself with, and what will kind of that ultimately bring you?
right.
And you're not focused on, this is why especially with what we're doing on here, I don't ever want it to be about one person.
Yeah,
Even though we might use certain people in the future kind of to display things, martial arts is always about a community. Martial arts is always about the people you're involved with. It is a social activity, though it can be done in solitary. But we always have to think about that, and we always have to think about how we pass it on, and especially how we make sure it's good when it's
right.
passed on. How we do that is by making sure that these tests are appropriate for people to gauge people's skills and push them on farther than we have it currently.
Absolutely, absolutely. So
There's my button on that topic. Anything else you want to add, Jeremy?
no, I think that's a good place to wrap it up right there. So
Cool, cool. So what are you working on this? If anyone can hear it, the typhoon. Then the next typhoon has just started where I'm at. So
oh, woohoo. Hey, all right,
yay,
party
rain.
time. All right. All right.
So
To be perfectly honest, I'm probably this next week I'll be looking at just kind of what kind of gets me going. I mean, I think I'm probably going to go back to AQ and continue to work on that a little bit more. And I mean, that's kind of really kind of dug into me a little bit more than what it has in the past. So I think that, and just continue to do my therapy and exercises and walking with my brace and everything else. So that's where I'm at. So
there we go. The bionic Echo. We can rebuild it, make him stronger, have him go on a boat faster.
I don't know about faster, but we'll just get it down. Let's just get it solid and work on some stuff. So that's mainly it.
There you go. There you go. Um, I'm just working on kind of a little more. I'm just putting a little more on each day. That's kind of what I'm working on this week. Is just brain aside, to just keep everything nice and solid, and keep on trying to build a relationship with some of the Kyokushin guys recently started working with. Cool, cool. All
Very
right,
cool.
all right, my friend. I think that's it for tonight. Anything you want to say to the audience before we get out of here?
Yeah, I did catch the highlights of the All Blacks game earlier today. So keep going, All Blacks. My other team, Ireland, is like, I hated to see this matchup this close to the end, or this far away from the end, I guess. But I was like, Okay, well, that's all right. Okay, but hey, go All Blacks, keep going. Let's win another World Cup. Here we go. So
Yeah, I mean, hopefully the typhoon won't stop it too much, but it is the nonstop of articles of look at these really handsome, really strong, big foreign men help clean up Japan after a typhoon. Um,
yeah, well, you know, I
the
mean,
endless amount of articles about that is entertaining. So,
well, you know, I'll at least back it up with. I mean, look at their character. I mean, that's that they don't have to do that. So I thought that was kind of cool. So
yeah, no, they didn't, and more power to them for that. Um, cool. Well, signing off. I'm John.
and I'm Jeremy. Have a good night.
Have a good night and keep training, folks.